Alright, so today what I wanted to do was talk about pursuer type enemies in Resident Evil. More importantly, the newer releases of Resident Evil. If you aren't aware, Resident Evil 7, Resident Evil 8, the 2 remake and the 3 remake, and by the look of it, Resident Evil 4 remake, have a pursuer type enemy. Just to kind of confirm so you know what that is, it's basically Jack Baker, Lady Dimitrescu, Mr. X and Nemesis, enemies that are unkillable, that will follow you around a certain part of the game and try and kill you, and the only way you can kind of stop them from killing you is to avoid them or stagger them when you see them. They're quite fun, but I'm getting to a point with them where it's kind of tedious. I do want to say out of the gate, this is not a complaint. I don't dislike the system at all. I think it's good in some kind of volumes, and we'll get to that in a moment, but especially with the 4 remake looking to have one as well, it's getting to a point where it's kind of overused. It's kind of getting a little bit boring now, so we'll go over what I think about it, talk about how it could be improved, and yeah, let's go. Okay, so let's start with the positive side of the pursuer type. So, I'll start with your first ever run of those games, okay? So the first run of the game, you don't really know where you're going, you don't really know where anything is that you need or don't need. You kind of usually want to explore everything, and they are there. They are ever present, they're chasing you down, and you'll probably die. You'll most likely die on your first couple runs, because you don't know their patterns, you don't know their attacks, you don't know their routes, and it's fresh. And then again, you know, on your hardest difficulty run, usually they buff these pursuer type enemies. They're faster, they hit harder, based on the game you're playing. Items may be in different places, and you'll need to find them. So again, you'll need to go past the pursuer type quite a few times, and again, they're faster, hit harder, you'll probably die. And I think those two runs specifically, so your first ever run and your first like hard mode run, it probably is a bit more entertaining to deal with them, rather than being just annoying and irritating. But that's where it changes, okay? So after you've played the game through a couple times, and you're on to doing like the challenges for the achievements, so for example in Resident Evil 7, you've got your achievements where you can't use the item box, you can't use it without, play the game without healing, using the healing items or anything like that. At that point, when you've played the game enough that you're confident in doing those things, it's kind of tedious because you know where they're going to be, you know where they can and cannot go, you know how they attack, and you can kind of finesse them pretty well. It's usually as simple as kind of walking backwards facing them, and as soon as they swing, like step back a little bit further, and as soon as that swing animation's gone, you can walk past them, and that's it. That works with Jack Baker. Sometimes if you time it right, it works with Mr. X if you time it right. And with Resident Evil 3, he's even more of a joke. Like, if you get that dodge timing down perfectly, he's never going to hit you once. Now, with Resident Evil Village, this is, like, again, probably one of my very few complaints with the Resident Evil Village, but the Lady Dimitrescu pursuer type is so really bad. It's so bad. Like, she's in 2 corridors and in the courtyard. That's it. You can literally walk past her at some points as well. She isn't fast, even in like Village of Shadows. It doesn't really feel like she's going to get you, and it's not very good. Like, there's not enough routes for her to go in. Again, you're going to shoot her a couple of times, and she'll stand there talking at you for like a good few seconds, which gives you time to walk past, and just it isn't very good in Resident Evil Village. I don't like it, to be honest, and it just kind of felt like it was there for no reason in Village, but that's just me. I think the game that really did it best was probably Resident Evil 2. Personally, because he literally covered the entire police station. Like, there was no way, apart from safe rooms, there was really nowhere he wouldn't go, unless it was like a puzzle room or a safe room. Like, he would go everywhere, and he was fast on hardcore. Like, you would have to know where you were going. If you were doing hardcore second runs, again, it rerolls all the item spawns, so you need to know where you're going. He spawns in a lot earlier in second run, I think, as well, so he's there more often, and it just adds that whole new layer of terror to the game. Like, I really do think in Resident Evil 2, it is the best version of the pursuer type. Nemesis, again, very restricted to where he can go. It's not really much in Resident Evil 3, and obviously after the first part of the game, he doesn't chase you anymore. It's literally just a boss rush mode after that point. So, again, not particularly good. And they're my kind of thoughts about it at the moment. I think it's good for the first couple runs of a game, but after that, when you learn them, and you know how to get around them, they become pretty, like, just tedious and irritating because they're just in the way, really. But now that's covered, I do want to go over what they could do to improve it, especially with Resident Evil 4 seeming to have one as well. So let's just talk about what they could do to improve the system. So with Resident Evil 4, based off the trailer alone, I'm going to go on a limb and say that Mendez is going to be the pursuer type. So probably more likely than not, your pursuer type enemy in Resident Evil 4 is going to be in and around the village part of the game. There could be more, he could be more present throughout the entire game, we don't know, but based off what we've seen, I think he's probably going to be in the village part of the game more than anything else. So with that being said, the village area of the game, even looking at it from the original Resident Evil 4, it's a big part of the game. It's a big portion of the game. There's a lot of places to go. It's fairly big as well. And he could definitely be a more ever-present threat in the village portion of RE4 Remake. One thing I think they could do is just make him a bit more random. Okay, like he doesn't just chase you. Maybe he kind of like sends enemies your way. He is the leader of the village after all. Maybe he could send hordes of enemies your way. Maybe he could like chase you with a group of enemies as well with him, like hunting you down with like a pack of enemies. Maybe because obviously it's an old town village, everything's made of wood. Maybe there's more walls he can come through out of nowhere. You know, maybe it's more randomized in terms of that, because I think it doesn't happen much in these other games. You've got one wall Nemesis comes through in the remake, I think. Jack as well, right at the beginning. There's 2 spots or 3 spots Mr. X does it in, and then Dimitrescu again doesn't really do anything. But they could definitely add more random places you can like breach through walls in and stuff like that. That'd be really cool. Maybe randomize it as well, so you don't know if it's going to happen or not. Kind of like how they did it in Resident Evil 3 original on PS1. Nemesis wasn't really a pursuer type enemy in Resident Evil 3 originally. He was there, you would fight him at certain points, but what they would do was there were certain spots of the police station he would jump out of walls at, but they wouldn't do it every time, so you couldn't kind of expect it. So it would throw you for a looper sometimes, because sometimes you go through a corridor like 3 times and it wouldn't happen, and you go through it again and boom, he jumps through a wall at you, and now he's there. Like, that would be a really good way to do it in the 4 remake, add a bit more randomness to it, because there's potential you could go through a run and not see him jump through a wall once, but then you could go through another run, and he goes through every single wall that's possible, or, you know, he comes through one every now and again, when it's more important, when you would rather him not do it, basically. Another thing, different weapon variation for them. Again, this is more so in Resident Evil 3 Remake. Again, Nemesis isn't a massive pursuer type, but at the beginning of the game, he usually just chases you and punches you, and uses his tentacle to kind of like put you on the floor. And then after the first boss fight with him, he just come back briefly while you get back to the subway, and he has a rocket launcher. Like, give the pursuer types different weapon variations progressively or randomly throughout the run. Like maybe Mendez comes at you with his fists at first, but then maybe he has like, I don't know, a crossbow or some shit, just for example, you know, like he can shoot you now. It's possible, they could do that if they wanted to. Again, it would add a more tactical layer of how you have to deal with them, because he's not just running at you to punch you anymore, he's trying to shoot you. So you've got to like bob and weave, and make sure you don't run into enemies along the way. That would add a really good layer to it as well, I think. But they're kind of my ideas of what they could do to improve the system, personally. In terms of the pursuer type enemy itself, we'll probably see it in RE4 Remake, it's more likely at this point, based on what we've seen in the trailer. But after that, whatever the next game may be, whether it's another remake, which we'll be getting into this week about remakes in general, or Resident Evil 9, or anything else for that matter, please don't put one in there. Like, take a break from that, because it's going to get stale. It's very tedious. Again, if you're someone who plays these games like once and then doesn't play them again, like just to finish the game, it's probably fine, you probably enjoy it. But if someone who plays the game to 100% it and then plays it even more after that to do like certain runs and certain challenges and stuff like that, the pursuer type becomes more of a, like, an inconvenience, really. Like, they're just there to get in the way, and they're not even really classed as an enemy at that point. They become more of an obstacle, and I think that's kind of where I'm at with them at the moment. I don't dislike them, again, I do want to say that, I don't dislike them at all, but it just getting to a point now where it's a bit tedious to deal with and have them in every single game. If anyone doesn't know, in terms of games that are kind of built around that premise, like Outlast and stuff like that, where you are constantly chased by like these pursuers that you can't fight back on, those type of games I really don't like, because it just gets so tedious and boring. Like, the same thing happens every single time. You go into a new area, there's a new enemy that chases you around, you have to hide, you have to run, and it gets so boring. I just don't like that type of game, and if they keep doing it in Resident Evil, it's going to feel the same. It's going to get boring, it's going to get predictable, and yeah, either they completely get rid of it for a game, take a break from it, or they completely kind of change how it works and add new things that they can do to you to make it harder. That would be kind of how I would like to see it. But that is it, that is my thoughts on the whole situation. Do let me know what you guys think. Do you enjoy the pursuer types? Do you want them to remain in the game? Do you want them to take a break from them or make them harder to deal with? Let me know down below in the comments. Remember to subscribe for more Resident Evil content, and as always, I'll see you all tomorrow for another video.